Okay, take it away, Sean. Simplifying the soldering process. Next slide, please. I got a lot of slides and they go fast. Common practice currently is puddling on the back of the volume and tone pots. And my experience is that people who have done a number of months of soldering and have good technique and good equipment, they can make nice little clean, well-wetted puddles on the back of the pots. New students, it's a nightmare and it doesn't work well. And because I typically have students that have never soldered before, I wanted to come up with a different idea. And I looked at it, I thought, my gosh, there's like 5 things going on in there and 4 things going on in there. That makes it kind of a ugly looking, gnarly mess on the back. And as Dave pointed out, or somebody pointed out, it'd be nice to have a clear cover over the electronics pocket and have real nice, neat looking wiring back there. Kind of hard to do with that. Next slide, please. And so puddle problems is what I call them. All of my students are newbies. They never come in knowing how to solder. The equipment in most schools that I've been to is horrible. And the students don't understand how to clean and tin the tips, which is absolutely necessary. And we have to and we have to talk about heat transfer, because keep in mind what the tip of that soldering iron looks like. It's a conical tip. Heat transfer is maximum with maximum surface area contact. And so you've got to get the temperature of the back of that pot up to the point where you're going to be able to melt the solder. But I see students put that sharp point of the solder tip down there, and it takes forever and it doesn't work, and now they're melting the solder against the iron and they're just making a glob that doesn't stick. You need to lay the edge, the side of that. Now you got at least a line instead of a point, but you have to maximize that surface area contact. And they always use too much solder. They're always poking the solder in there, and you get an iceberg on there. And they're making cold solder connections because they're not getting it hot enough to create wetting action. And it just makes a sloppy looking build. Next, please. Here's an example. This was from the Delaware Institute this summer. The equipment we had was really in bad shape, and I ended up spending quite a bit of time with a file filing off the tip, and I brought my own tin cleaning and tinning materials, and I spread it out around so people had access to it. And we got the tips as tinned and cleaned as we could, but even still they had a hard time making good puddles on the back. Next, please. So, first, before we get started, I want to recommend a few things on soldering practice. Everybody uses sponges. And again, we're going to talk a little bit about temperature and heat. They're different. And so I tell the students, look, there's something called latent heat of vaporization. And what that is you're just sucking heat out of everything, but holding the temperature at 212, which is not hot enough to melt the solder, and you're also kind of promoting rust on the end of the iron. So everybody cleans it on a wet sponge. Well, there's a better way to do it. You can buy these little brass copper scrunchie things, and you scrub the tip in there and it cleans it off without stripping all the heat off. And if you want to get access to this, I did put the links to all these things, the Amazon links where I bought this stuff, are all online. Next, please.
We're going to have all of these online, in the next week or so to be able to come up.
Yeah, and all these links are all hyperlinks, are all functional too. Tip cleaner and tinner. This to me is a must-have in a soldering lab. And the technique is I scrunch it first in the copper and then I roll it in this compound. And when you've got it well tinned, you come up, there's solder and there's flux and there's abrasives built into this. You scrunch that around in there and holy cow, the tip shines. And now you've got a tip that's ready to solder. Next, please. Flux. Flux is very important in soldering. If you've ever done any plumbing soldering, you always first clean the copper, then you flux it, and then you solder. And the reason for the flux is twofold. One is it does kind of etch and clean the copper even a little bit more. The other thing is it prevents oxidation in the soldering process. As soon as you heat the copper up, it starts to oxidize. And the third thing, flux means to flow. It helps the solder flow, and it sort of catalyzes the wetting process. And what the wetting process is you actually end up creating a real microscopically thin alloy of copper, tin, and lead. The solder is tin and lead, the copper down here, and you end up making a little alloy in between, and that's where you get the good bond. That's called wetting, and this promotes that. Also, good solder. There are some solders I have used that just don't work worth a hoot. And I've tried a bunch, and this Kester solder right here, the number is on here, but I also put the link to get it. This one seems to work the best for me. I don't remember the exact proportion. Solders are rated in a ratio of tin to lead. I think this is 44 up here, so it must be like a 44, 56, something like that proportion. And it's a little bit stouter than some of them. The ones that are real skinny are hard to work with. So this is a good solder. Again, the link is there. Next, please. And this is what it looks like when it's set up for my soldering. And I use what's called the impending drip method. Once I get the tip clean, I take about that much solder and I melt it onto the tip. I don't use any more solder. I take a little tiny bit of the flux and I put it at the connection, and then I take that tip with an impending drip of solder and I just touch it right on there, and I hold it because I got to let the temperature of the metal get up to beyond the melting point of the solder, and then let it go, and boop, I have a perfect solder joint. And then the next one shows how clean the tip is. You can see how shiny that is, and that's from just rolling it around in that tip cleaner and tinner. Next, please. So here's my alternative to puddling. It's creating a foil ground plane. And what I did was I bought this Craftex foil. It's 2 inches wide. And I don't know if you guys do this, but like on duct tape and things like that, what I'll do, rather than wrap it all the way around when I'm done, and then it's hard to get off, I always take and fold the flap over. So then I'll tear that flap off, and then it's easy to get it undone again. Well, that's what I did on this. This is peel and stick copper foil. Next, please. It's peel and stick like this. So what I did for this one was I just rolled it over a few times and made a relatively thick tab. And next, please. And then what I did was I took a credit card, and as I peeled the paper off the back, I just smoothed it on. I took an X-Acto knife and cut little X's in there and poked my fingers in to make the holes. So now I have a ground plate with a tab that I can solder things to. Next, please. And what I decided was, I come from the renewable energy world, and one of the big improvements that was made in solar photovoltaic technology was the invention of the weeb, W-E-E-B. And what a weeb is it's a grounding washer. And in order to expedite the installation of solar modules, solar frames are anodized aluminum. The rails they mount to are anodized aluminum. The anodizing is totally non-conductive. So what the weeb is, it's a washer that's got these like little moon craters in it, up and down. And when you tighten down on that, the sharp edge of that crater bites right through the anodization into the aluminum, and it makes a gas-tight connection. It's all NEC approved and everything. And I thought, whoa, I'll just use stainless steel star washers. And you want to go with stainless steel or brass rather than common steel, so you don't get any kind of corrosion in there. But with a stainless steel star washer, it bites into the case of the pot and it bites into the copper. Next, please. And I think it works as well. And what I did was I did 2 different versions here. I'll show you the second version in a bit. But I put those pots in there with the copper foil. And then I took a multimeter and I did continuity checks. So next slide, please. First thing I did was I took the leads, set this for continuity, took the leads and pinched them together. So I got 2 round bars and I basically got a point contact there. It takes a while to settle in, and I got down to 0.7 ohms of resistance, just pinching the leads together. Now I have an old rig that does have soldered puddles. You see the soldered puddles there. I went from top of pot to top of pot. It settled in at 1 ohm from pot to pot. Next, please. Then I took with the copper foil pot to pot. It settled in at 0.6 ohms. And I think the reason is I picked up 1/10 of an ohm from pinching because I got more surface area of contact, lower resistance. So I thought, this is going to work. So next slide, please. So I put it all together, neat and sweet. And this is kind of what it looks like. Notice, no solder puddles, everything is nice and tidy, and I feel comfortable putting a plexiglass cover over it. The other thing this does is lends to the opportunity to talk to the students about schematic diagrams versus wiring diagrams. Here's two versions that I did, and notice the, well, let me get this off of here. The wiring is different. I positioned the pots in different orientations. And it doesn't make any difference what direction things run as long as the wires are connected in the right way. And both of these, even though they're different from one another, they both make a nice, neat soldering implementation when you're all done. So that's part of the goal. The other part is so that it really works. So next slide, please. Oh, that's just another angle. Go ahead, next slide. So does it work? Yes, it really does, and I'm going to show you. So I'm going to put this guy back on. Ground goes there. This goes to one side of the selector. This goes to the other side of the selector. And the yeah, so it works. And volume's up full on everything, and there's not much hum going on there. And it even works with Annie Wilson. Where'd you go, Annie? Roger is hiding Annie in the back room somewhere. There she is. And what's nice again with this is you can do the tone check that you can't do with the tuning fork. So you got that. Now, if you would go to the next slide, please. I also have a variation on the theme. And the variation on the theme I discovered when Bill and I started talking about his Tone Monster guitar and the little blending pot. The blending pot is made by a company called Borns. And Borns, as it turns out, they make high-end stuff for custom guitars, and they also don't like puddling on the back of the pots. They have developed their own washer, which is this guy right here. And it reminds me of the Weave and the Star. It's got a flange up and a flange down, up, down, up, down. And what it does is it's a washer for the potentiometer, and it comes out the side with this nice big tab for soldering to. So my two variations on the theme here are, one of them is with the copper only. Is this guy still playing? Yep. There we go. One of these is with the copper only, and you can see the tab here. Now, a lot of people say, well, how'd you solder that? What I did was I took my Swiss Army knife and I took out the little leather awl and I poked a hole. And then I took a little bit of the flux and I put flux around the hole on the copper. And then I took the wire, poked it through and bent it back and pinched it. On this, I put the impending drip of solder on my iron, touched it right there, and it flowed right out over the copper and made a perfectly solid connection. Not too bad, but I thought, doggone it, those little Borns solder lug washers are pretty sweet. And so this one has two of those. And what I also realized about these things, they nest. If you rotate them at the right angle, they nest, and you can put two out from underneath a single pot. So when I realized that, I didn't get a chance to build a third one. I was going to make a third one with no copper and just two of the washer lugs under each pot. One of the things Tom pointed out is, well, this is kind of expensive, and he's right, this stuff is, but these Borns washers, go ahead one, Sean, please. Yeah, here's where I got them from. I got them from Aero Electronics. I bought a bag of 50, free shipping, $3.80. Holy cow, that's pretty darn cheap. So, you know, for that cost, that low of a cost, you can throw 4 of those things in a bag And it's like less than 50 cents to throw 4 of them in a bag, and that's not too bad. And then you don't have to puddle on top or piddle on top of the solder pots. Next, please. Yeah, so here you can see I've got the solder lug washers. Next, please. And just another view, same thing. I put 2 on. Next, please. And then I wired the whole thing up. There's 2 sitting off on the side, but I got one there, so the ground from the jack goes right to that lug. This lug I have set up where I could bring the ground wires from the pickups, twist them together. I could even bring the bridge ground in, twist that in, and I could put all those on there because the hole's so big. And I thought that would do it. Next, please. And just another view of the same thing. It keeps the wiring nice and tidy, and that's it, fini. Yes, sir.
So you're doing these on the back of the beam plate just for demonstration?
Yes, this is just for demonstration.
You'd be putting the foil in the bottom.
Yes, and here's how I would do it in class. I've not done this in class yet. Remember last year I had that square endocytis jig that I built my test setup on for testing the wiring. I would have one of those all covered with copper. And so I would test it with the copper on the test jig, then just take it all off, and I already have copper in the bottom of the guitar, drop it all in, and I know it's going to work. So that would be the plan. And I think I brought a few of the washers with me. I did, they're right here. So I'll set the washers here. You can see, you rotate them to the right angle of that little hexagon in there, and they nest together nice and tight. And now I got 2 lugs sticking up, just like that, and they bite right into each other. So I thought it was pretty cool, and to me, adding that with Bill's little test for testing tone, and starting to put tone monsters in all my guitars, I'm getting really excited about it next school year.
How does the risk resistance stack up with those compared to the copper?
It's about the same. I mean, because again, you got multiple points of contact, and you want to snug these things up, snug the nut up well so it bites in. But what it's doing is when you're doing it this way, you're only biting, and without the copper, you're only biting into the bottom of the pot case. But then you solder a wire from here to there. I mean, there wasn't that much difference. If you're an ohm or less, you're grounded. So you're in good shape.
Wow, pretty cool.
So anyway, I wanted to share that. I thought I like making things neat and tidy, and
Getting away from the puddle is awesome.
yeah, getting away.
Well,
Yeah,
that's the easiest way to run the pots.
yeah.
Is for students to just bake them.
And not just that, but some of the pots, they have dimples. You can see the dimples in them. And sometimes that dimple goes all the way through and makes a hole. I've actually had students put so much solder, the solder goes down inside the pot. Okay, throw that one away, let's get a new pot. So anyway, I'll leave all this stuff up here if people want to peek at it. And anyway, any other questions? Was I less than 15 minutes?
I don't know, but it was awesome.